Have you ever thought about what a consultant might actually be able to share with regard to financial planning, financial advice, and making better wealth decisions? This is Make Better Wealth Decisions, a podcast about financial blind spots, decision making, and how the reality of higher rates, global tensions, and tariff instability impact your investments. I'm your host, John DeGuy, a portfolio manager with Design Securities in Toronto. This week, we're going to be speaking with one of the top sales coaches in North America, and he's going to share his own personal experiences about finance and also what he believes everyone else should be knowing so they can make better wealth decisions. My guest this week is Doug Dvorak. He is an author, speaker, and consultant whose mission in life involves enhancing business performance and leadership success. Doug, welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here, John, and nice to be on your Better Wealth Decisions podcast.
Tell the listeners about who you are and what you do. What can you tell us about Doug Dvorak?
Thank you, John. I'm a speaker and trainer specifically in the area of motivation, leadership, and sales productivity. We have three essential pillars to our business: one-on-one, one-to-many sales coaching to small to medium-sized businesses to large publicly traded Fortune 500. We also do live training and virtual sales training, every aspect of a consultative sales process. And then one of the largest pillars of our business is interim fractional sales leadership. So if a business has a gap in sales leadership, myself or one of my very talented senior VPs of sales will come into that business for a period of time and really take the reins and run profitably and productively that sales team up until we find a replacement. And more often than not, we're involved in sourcing that new sales leader.
So it's interesting because people will be listening and they'll say, so what does a guy who's got sales coaching have to do with financial decision making? But I think there's actually a great deal of overlap. And you and I were talking before we started recording the podcast about how there are certain things that transfer from one to the other, and specifically how you've had a good experience in working with a professional advisor. This is a podcast about decision making in personal finance. And I'm wondering if you could perhaps begin by offering what you think are the biggest obstacles to financial decision making.
So the biggest obstacles to financial decision making, in my experience with myself and my family, was thinking I could do it better than a certified financial planner or a professional wealth manager. I tried that route and it was a race to the bottom. Timing the market, this tip, that tip. We live in a world of VUCA today, VUCA, volatility, complexity, ambiguity, uncertainty. I love that VUCA acronym: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And there's so much data. When it comes to making great decisions, I would say start early, but align yourself with a wealth management professional or a certified financial planner. Experience is a great teacher, but the tuition's too high. I tried to read those books and go through reports and get the tip, and it was a race to the bottom. Do I want to be the tortoise or the hare in investing? I want to be the hare. I'm playing the long game, and I'm playing that long game with a professional like yourself. As I shared with you, John, on the start of this podcast, I've had a relationship with a fiduciary and certified financial planner for 25 years. And if I go back to 1999, when I started our relationship with him and his firm, look at what we went through: Asian financial crisis, 9/11, global financial crisis. And so many of my friends in the market, out of the market, gold, silver, crypto, and they lost money. So really the philosophy of a great money manager is invest in great stocks that have a great management team, a good product or service, a strong balance sheet, and don't try to time the market. So I would say money professionals, certified financial planners don't cost, they pay. It's important to work with a fiduciary or someone that has gone through the rigors of becoming a certified financial planner.
I just want to clarify, you said you want to be the hare. I think you meant the tortoise, right? The slow and steady. And
I'm sorry, I don't want to be the hare. I want to be the tortoise.
Yeah.
Slow and steady wins the race, working in alignment with my certified financial planner.
So the work that you do in your speaking, and because you not only consult, you also speak, and you're also an advocate and a change agent, much along the lines of what it is that I aspire to be, but I'm not at your level. There's a saying that I've heard a number of times that I thought is something that I would just put out there to see what your thoughts are on the saying. And that is, your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude in life. I don't know if you've ever heard it, but I'm wondering what you think about it. A lot of it is just between your ears and how you approach things and having a positive mental attitude. Can you maybe comment on that?
Sure. When we grow and scale and hire new team members, there's a hiring maxim that I present to all our team members. A's hire A's, B's hire C's, and C's put you out of business. So we're striving for an A team in a very high performance culture at my businesses. But I'll take can do over IQ anytime. When I meet someone, if their default is honesty, integrity, positivity, because if you look at the state of the world and the 24-hour news cycle, there's an old adage in the news business: if it bleeds, it leads. Good news travels fast, bad news travels even quicker. So I believe that positive attitude, a default of positivity, having that great, being of service to others, helping others solve their problem, having an attitude of abundance, A, is a prerequisite to success in business and in life, but it's also a prerequisite in navigating this very Planet Bizarro type world we're living in right now, where we're all divided, we're shouting, social media, all that. People like to be around people with high integrity, that are positive, that don't talk crap about other people, and really have a pure, kind, and radiant soul. I think that's a competitive advantage. And I think it's a very much healthier way of living.
And it's especially true in a VUCA world, because it's always been true, but it's never been truer and more in urgent supply than it is right now. In a recent blog post, because I've been lurking on your blog as well, you talk about a number of things, but you were speaking about humor. And it resonated with me, because I'm going to see if I can quote this. You said, humor drives change and encourages individuals to embrace new perspectives, to energize their personal and professional lives. And I read that and I thought, wow, I wish I was funny, because I'm so very earnest. I'm having a hard time being funny. So I do a bit of speaking and advocacy work on my own, nowhere near your level, but could you maybe take a moment to share your thoughts with regard to using humor?
Sure. First and foremost, I use clean, intelligent humor. I'm not a choir boy by any means, but try to incorporate intelligent, customized, clean humor that builds up, that doesn't tear down, not at the expense of anyone else. And back in the early 90s, I have a long history of spending time in Toronto, primarily in the 90s, early 2000s. I love it. But in the early 90s, I got involved in Second City in Chicago. And I went to Second City, Toronto, and I'm a great lover of many of their storied cast: Gildy Radner, Mike Myers, John Candy. But that really, to be a student of humor and to learn some improv skills, really was a competitive advantage. Because if you're laughing with someone, sharing a hearty guffaw, not at the expense of someone else, you're really disconnecting yourself from your current VUCA world, challenges, stress, and you're really sharing at a very deep emotional level when you're having a good laugh or humor. And there's humor in everything today, waiting at the DMV or in a line. And instead of getting stressed out, I try to just, stop, restraint of pen and tongue when life is stressful, and just trying to add some humor whenever I can. Invariably, I travel quite a bit. My second home is the United Airlines and Marriott. I spend about 100 nights a year in a Marriott. And I found that in traveling, inclement weather, the problems we're having with stressed air traffic control systems, that about 10 years ago, I found this smile on a stick. And I've seen some people go off on a gate agent because of a mechanical issue or inclement weather. And I just walk up and I say, it looks like you could use a smile. This $1.50 smile on a stick has brought more joy and stress relief, because people are really stressed out in this world of VUCA. So I try to pay it forward. I try to be kind, and I try to instill some fun, some humor, not at the expense of someone else. Because when you share a good laugh, you really disconnect, as I mentioned, from your current stressors, and you share a deep emotional bond with that individual.
So let me see if you can hopefully offer at least one example of specific advice. What advice would you give to make personal finance funnier and more relatable?
Well, if you want less stress and you want a higher top line, hire a certified financial planner. It alleviates stress. These are the professionals. And, I was reading the Wall Street Journal, The Economist, online research, Motley Fool, and trying to get one up on a stock trade. And once I gave my assets to a professional money manager, I had a much better return and I slept better at night because they've got the stress I don't. So it's a relief. And I think I pay 1.25% of my total assets per year. That's peanuts. If I look over that 25-year time horizon I've been with my certified financial planner, it's peanuts. But to really take the time, start investing, interview a couple certified financial planners, find someone you feel comfortable with that really takes the time to earn your respect and your business and ensure that they really understand what your objectives are, because it can be a huge, huge win and a huge de-stressor, and you'll have more time to laugh.
So it's funny. Well, one thing you may not know about me is that I call my advisory practice, I branded it as Stand Up Advisors. I even have a license plate on my car. It's Stand Up One. And when I tell people about stand up, and the idea here is that you stand up to the industry and you stand up for your clients and being a stand up guy. But a lot of people think that I do stand up comedy. Like they expect they're going to see me at Second City. And I no. That's not who I am. That's not what I do. Personal finance is serious business. And I'm always looking for new ways to communicate ideas. And do you have any suggestions for how I could get people to understand personal finance in a way that can maybe use humor, especially in a way that makes things, and again, I'm going to say it again, more human, more relatable, easily digestible?
Sure. One of the things our financial planner does is when he sends out his monthly and quarterly update, he'll find various funny cartoons from Barron's, Wall Street Journal, The New Yorker, and he'll insert those into a relevant topic that supports. So I think looking to anything that's timely relative to market conditions that are tasteful, but recognize that, if you can have the right attitude with the right financial planner, and if you are really playing the long game, that you're going to have your peaks and valleys, but just recognize that if you want to cry instead of laugh, try to manage your own money, try to time the market. NFTs and crypto, it's crazy. But really working with a strong certified financial planner such as yourself can really give you more time to laugh and decrease your stress.
So let's see if we can go from the specific to the general. Usually we go from the general to the specific. You've already told us about you're working with a qualified professional. What are your thoughts about what the typical investor wants and expects from their advisor? Do you think they want that work to be taken off their plate, the stress that goes with managing the money and also following capital markets? Or do some people secretly like it and they have a hard time letting go?
Well, some people like the DIY portfolio approach, and some years they might do okay. But over the course of their time horizon, if they're a DIY or not really a certified financial planner or investment professional, they lose. So I would say that I think it's out of reach for many working class young professionals. They think money manager and they think, well, I've got to have seven figures in the bank. No, you don't. So I think demystifying that there is ready access to professionals like you, and then explaining to them what is the role, what is our relationship going to be. So I think is demystifying, giving access, and then meeting with those individuals to tell them what a certified financial planner and a fiduciary can do. Because of those people that may have tried it in the past, some have a bad taste because it was not a true fiduciary certified financial planner. It was a salesperson who kept the money moving so they could make commissions.
So I have to ask a bit of a personal question then as well. Then, do you think ordinary investors want an advocate as something they want from an advisor? Because a lot of what I do is advocacy. And specifically, if the answer is yes, how would you build a brand around advocacy?
I think most people at the end of the day, if they have some monies invested, they would want that for a fair and reasonable fee off their plate so they could do other things. And so as I would build a brand around that, obviously, social media, websites, great podcasts like Better Wealth Decisions, and depending, where you operate and if you are in a specific niche or vertical, offering some public education workshops, libraries, universities, demystifying access to certified financial planners. You don't need $1 million to establish a relationship with me. So that's how I would build a brand.
I want to take another moment just to stay on the humor, because I think I've never really had a guest that's had any kind of a background with regard to humor. And I couldn't help but note the pun, because, the practice is called stand-up advisors, that we could maybe talk about that. So you've mentioned that humor can break down barriers, build trust, and make complex concepts more understandable. And that it can also promote perspective shifts and to help gain emotional engagement. And I'm all about trying to get people to shift their perspective. In fact, my most recent book is called Bullshift, because I talk about how the industry shifts your perspective to try to make you feel bullish all the time. I'm an optimist. I don't want people to think that I'm not optimistic, but I'm also concerned about optimism bias, which is when people think that, bad things will happen, but for whatever reason, they don't think it's going to happen to them personally. And that then causes people to let their guard down, to be a bit naive about what could go wrong. And I'm not saying anything will go wrong, but you need to be prepared. And I don't think people are necessarily thinking about that. So let's talk about humor one more time. I'm an optimist by disposition. My concern is that people in my business will gloss over the risks that they're being exposed to. How would you go about shifting people's perspectives so that they can understand the risks that they may be taking, perhaps even unwittingly, so that they can hopefully be comfortable and able to deal with the VUCA challenges that the world has always faced, but especially in 2025?
For the context of our discussion here on better wealth decisions, I don't know if I can add humor content to that, but what I would say relative to the optimism bias is I've gotten to know you, John, and you strike me as a man of high character, integrity, and being honest. And that's how you would portray your professional relationship. I just think meeting with people, demystifying what a certified financial planner does and does not do, and then being very honest with them relative to how you suggest they deploy their assets, manage their money, but have a financial management plan. So I think if people can meet with you or a certified financial planner and understand what their goals and objectives are and the risks, market cycles, there will be bull markets and there will be bear markets. And here's how we're going to construct your portfolio in a bear market, et cetera. What's your time horizon? 15 years, 20 years, and then structuring the portfolio aligned with that. And then just being human and being truthful. I think that goes a long way in this world of VUCA.
So let's talk about the challenges associated with portfolio management. And do you think people delegate some of those decisions to a CFP or to a portfolio manager in order to get the emotional stress off their plate? So it may not be an intellectual question. It might very much be just an emotional thing, because a lot of decision-making, frankly, is emotional. Do you think there are some people who hire an advisor just so that they can sleep better at night and not have to worry about the emotions, or is it something else?
I think some do, but I think the lion's share are chasing returns. If they get a financial planner that was referred to them where they just had 2 great years on a bull market, but they don't talk about the bull years, I think they chase returns. But if you can find, first and foremost, a great CFP that is in for the long haul, that is a professional, that is not day trading, I believe a close second to that is peace of mind. Here's my life savings. I trust you. You've demonstrated professionalism, proficiency, and you've shared with me a plan. Because most people, at least in the US, unfortunately, plan their vacations better than they plan their lives. And if you look at the personal, professional, health, family, those are the 4 pillars of a well-lived life. Great health, great family, professional, spiritual, religious, however you define spiritual, religion. But the financial piece, having access to a professional like yourself, and having a long game, because I think back to one of the quotes that made a huge impression on me that was said by Einstein on his deathbed when they asked him, what's the greatest thing you learned in your life? And he said, not E equals MC squared, the power of compound interest, the rule of 72. It just amazes me. But having that long-term focus, and I can remember back 40 years ago when I invested my first $25 every other week in the new vehicle, the IRA came out, and I stayed with it and I increased the amount. Pay yourself first. You don't spend what you don't see, and take it off the top and work with a financial planner.
This has been fascinating, and I enjoy everything you have to say, because, I wish I could have you sort of speak to the general public, because you say what I say, It's great coming from someone who doesn't have a vested interest. Well, because when I say it, people will say, well, of course, this is what he does for a living. Of course, he's going to say this is important stuff. But it's great to have people who have been very successful who swear by the things that I'm talking about because you've lived it and it works out really, really well. So that's wonderful. Always like to end with the same question that I ask all my guests. And that is, if it was up to you, what advice would you give people to help them to make better wealth decisions? Anything you want.
First and foremost, invest in yourself. Whatever your profession is, you work for yourself. You incorporate it first. Build those skills in a rapidly evolving digital AI landscape. Invest in yourself, lifelong learning, and then seek out a certified financial planner. Interview 2 or 3 with them, even if you only have $50,000 or $100,000 to invest. Power of working with that professional, compounding and taking that stress off your plate to allow you to invest in your family, in yourself, in your career, that will allow you to weather these VUCA peaks and valleys of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity.
And I'm going to steal VUCA and use that all the time going forward. So thank you for that. I want to thank you for your time today. It's been a real pleasure, and I want to wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you, John. Thank you to your listeners at the Better Wealth Decisions podcast. It's been a high honor and privilege.
Also, before I forget, and I don't ask for this very often, if you're watching this podcast, it would do me a world of good if you could like the podcast and subscribe to it. I know there are a lot of people who listen on a regular basis who are not subscribers. Please do me the favor of subscribing. It goes a long way. This podcast is not to be construed as offering specific investment advice. Please consult a qualified advisor before acting. My books, Stand Up to the Financial Services Industry and Bullshift, are available online. If you'd like to meet to discuss how the topics in this podcast affect you directly, please visit my website.